Thank you so much, Siddharth. Thank you so much to the audience. You are so patient and attentive, and even post lunch, you have been all ears in all the sessions. Thank you so much. And thanks equally to Siddharth for keeping the energy levels in the room so high. And I'm sure a lot of it is about his influence as well. He's such a live wire anchor that he never lets the energy levels in the room dip even a bit. And this is the last session of the day, so I expect a very lively conversation and discussion with all our panelists here. The topic at hand is multi-cloud and the business benefits that organizations can leverage from it. Now, it's a known fact that everything we are is a result of our choices. The choices that we make today is what really shapes our future. And nowhere is this more relevant than in the enterprise context. The way an enterprise actually chooses the cloud model that it adopts will then decide its future course of technology roadmap. And as organizations try to make choices between various cloud models, the multi-cloud environment becomes an emerging and obvious choice for organizations that have complex business lines, complex computing environments, geographically dispersed locations, and multiple lines of businesses. The benefits of a multi-cloud environment are quite a few. There's a study by Deloitte titled Closing the Cloud Strategy, Technology, and Innovation Gap, which talks about some of these benefits. Multi-cloud gives you the opportunity to then be able to build in better sourcing, better innovation capabilities, more security. Complexity, of course, comes with it, but then there is also the fact that you're obviating the risk of vendor lock-in, which is the dreaded fact in most cloud deployments. Now, organizations that have gone on a cloud journey have typically been on 5 different stages of a multi-cloud deployment. Now, the first stage is a stage of denial that multi-cloud is actually happening. So organizations are like, okay, we are on premise or maybe one cloud, we are standardized, and that's it. The second phase starts to kick in, which is a stage of euphoria, where they try to see some of the benefits of multi-cloud. They're seeing better agility, more scalability, better performance. This third stage is when the reality actually kicks in, when the cloud bills begin piling up. And that's when organizations also begin to realize the accountability, the shared responsibility model of security and application management. The fourth stage is the new normal, where organizations then accept the fact that they need to work around some of these challenges. And the last stage is where not many organizations have reached, which is where they start to accrue the benefits of a multi-cloud environment. So a quick show of hands, how many of you are in the third stage of multi-cloud deployment? Wonderful. Fourth stage, anyone? Okay. So with that, I'd like to start off with you, Mr. Brijpal. While we are talking about multi-cloud environments, and most organizations here have multi-cloud environments, the complexity that comes with it and everything, how do you go about making a business case for it before your business management, before the board?
So there are two sides to it. One is business expectations. What is that which is business is looking from digital solutions? Business is largely concerned about 5 or 6 different aspects. The first is innovation. At what rate you could build innovative products and services for the customer. Second aspect is agility. At what speed you could deliver these solutions to the end market. Third is the digital experience being delivered to the customer. How stable, performant that experience is. Fourth is if there are some regulatory compliance or brand related risks involved in this whole process. And last but not the least is the efficiency, which is the value proposition for the cost which is getting involved into digital solutions. So this is the demand side of it, which business executives are looking for. On the other side, what is the supply? On the supply side, you got different cloud service providers. And all cloud service providers, they are not equal. So while they have more or less competing products, platforms, services, but they are very different. Idea is to marry the two. One side you got expectations, on the other side you got these capabilities. If you go back in the history, say 10 years before, people were looking at cloud as purely an IaaS play, where developers they used to buy infrastructure, build their code grounds up, and then assemble the solution. Now this used to be a pretty tedious process, but if you really look at off late, now this is the era of digital platforms. Most of the capabilities are being delivered as platforms on cloud. Now today the modern development practices are to use these capabilities. And your expertise lies in the fact that how do you source these capabilities from multiple cloud to make best use of those platforms? And how do you assemble them? And then deliver the quality output to the business. So that's the game today, because cloud is a reality, multi-cloud is a reality because one cloud does not fulfill the promise. In fact, it's not only multi-cloud, it's also hybrid plus multi-cloud. Hybrid basically because you also got private cloud in the mix. Because when you look at any business use case, now all the use cases do not suit a particular cloud. It has to be a combination of something on-prem, on private cloud, few things on cloud A, other things on cloud B. I typically compare it with automobile industry, where automobile manufacturers, they manufacture car, but they do not manufacture engine, they do not manufacture tires. All they do is they take tire from company A, engine from company B, assemble them together and make a solution which is given to the market.
Right, and the whole idea behind it is to get the best of breed solutions rather than getting locked in with one vendor, right? And you articulated it really well in terms of clearly defining and explaining it to the board in terms of the expectations and matching it with the capabilities of cloud, and bringing in these angles of business benefits that will then help power digital experiences in the form of agility, innovations, and faster time to market and things like that. Now, I'd like to move on to Mr. Chaube. Mr. Chaube, while Richpal spoke about creating a boardroom pitch for multi-cloud and why it's important and why there's no denying the fact that multi-cloud is the way forward, what are some of the key business objectives at your firm that nudged you to deploy a multi-cloud environment, and how have you leveraged it to support your business growth?
So first of all, thanks everyone for having me here. Thanks Neha, thanks Soumya, thanks ETCIO. Good question. So how do we leverage multi-cloud environments? And as said by one of my panelists, right, I think the hybrid cloud is there to stay. Right? There is a lot of cost. Hybrid cloud and multi-cloud. These are two things which are going to stay, especially for the organizations which have large volume of data, which runs into double-digit petabytes of data. And running a query, simple query also takes 7, 8 hours, 10 hours, sometimes 24 hours, if we talk about operational reporting or dashboarding, or forget about building any predictive models out of it, right? So, because that also has a number of challenges. And when we are talking about cloud, those are the challenges which this cloud environment, which is coming up, right? is providing us, right? Especially from the storage, processing, and the complexity which is there, and the value that the business is looking for. I think these clouds are able to support it. If you look at even the models today, if we are building models, conventional AI algorithms is something that which were being used. I think we were able to use it in our individual servers in local environments. But today, the volume of data is huge. The algorithms, the AI algorithms are becoming complicated, right? So neural networks, every time there is a new version which is coming up. If you go on increasing the complexity of if you talk about neural networks, go on increasing the level of layers and epochs and so on and so forth, the model, the compute power required becomes more complex. And that's the time when we require processing capabilities like GPUs and TPUs and other things, right? So certainly, and this we can do in a very quick way. When we are talking about cloud, this we can do it in a quicker way, right? So what we are able to do it together, right? So one side we are able to generate revenue. First thing is the satisfaction for the customer. Why? Because the ultimate output is being rolled out to the customer, be it in the form of recommended products or be it in the form of some kind of personalized service that we want to present to the consumer, right? So that's the point. So generally, from consumer benefits to generating revenue to operational efficiencies to cost optimization techniques, right? So all those things are being achieved from this hybrid or multi-cloud environment that we are talking about. Now, I take cloud as an enabler for the business. It's an enabler for the business. We certainly, so, and also we have to understand that what is that we are going to take on the cloud, right? We have to very clearly understand what are the kind of use cases, what are the kind of business cases that we want to take on cloud. See, cloud is, if we talk about telco, 12,000, 15,000, thousands of KPIs are there, right? All the KPIs are important, but they may not be that important from the business perspective, from use case perspective. So all the KPIs need not be taken to cloud and then processed, right? Because there is a large cost associated to it. So certainly, right identification of use cases, because from near real time or maybe from batch processing mode, we need to go closer to the real time analytics. That is what is the requirement of the organizations today. Scale, speed is something that is required by the organization because that is required to run the campaigns at that pace. I think these are the benefits that multi-cloud brings in for the organizations and enterprises.
Absolutely. And you raised a very fundamental aspect to first be able to define what use cases and business cases you want to take to the cloud. I think that's a very important and fundamental starting point. You have to get that right under all circumstances. Otherwise, you're not really optimizing the cloud and making the best use of it. And also you alluded to the fact that organizations that have data intensive operations need to be on the cloud so that then they are able to leverage the cloud to come up with data intelligent decisions that can power their customer experience, going to the customer with proper personalized offerings, trying to understand their requirements, creating products and services that are tailor-made to customers is very critical. And that would be a perfect segue into my question to Mr. Natwar. You have a mature deployment of multi-cloud. What are some of the critical factors that determine the way you design your multi-cloud strategy?
Sure. I think the first most important factor is the size of business. If you're a small business, I do not think you should go to multi-cloud. The single cloud gives you the speed. Your business will not go down, and gives you the agility that is required. We work with close to 100 Fortune 500 companies, and not a single one of them is not multi-cloud. And interestingly, many of them are multi-cloud by default, not multi-cloud by design. it would be interesting to see how they ended up like that. In many situations, it's M&A, it's acquisitions. Some country within their ecosystem, they acquired a company. That company was in GCP, you're on AWS, and you know what? Eventually, they run on GCP, you're on AWS, and guess what? You are now have to think about multi-cloud strategy. The other reasons that we see people going multi-cloud is a lot of times it is about the best of breed solutions, which I think Brijpal alluded to. So you have a data science team, they love the Vertex AI on GCP, and that's what they want to deploy. And you would end up allowing a dev environment, not prod, but dev environment to run on GCP while the rest of the organization is on Azure. But guess what? You still have to monitor it. You still have to make sure that it's secure. You still have to maintain and provide right observability to it. So for various reasons, organizations end up deploying multi-cloud environment. What's important is to have an intentional strategy around multi-cloud. What is the underlying reasons that we want to have workloads across various cloud service providers, and then determine whether we want to have data portability, workload portability, workflow portability, traffic portability. In many situations where there are regulatory reasons for which you need to have multiple regions and multiple cloud providers, that would require a very different cloud strategy. So various things kind of come together, but most important is that if it's intentional, that's where we see successes within large Fortune 500 companies.
Right. So the size of your business and a clear intention on why you want to move to the multi-cloud is what? Any other critical success factors that go into the design of a multi-cloud environment? Anything else that comes to your mind?
Yeah, so I think there are some very important challenges which businesses face. First is around, what is the developer experience that you're providing as you're designing a multi-cloud experience. I'll give you a simple example, identity management. Azure would use AD for identity management. AWS would use IAM. You need an identity brokering service where you can trade your Azure identity to get the AWS identity. So it is the developer experience becomes extremely important. Security is again we discussed in the earlier sessions as well. The construct of the security in a multi-cloud setting changes completely. Earlier, you got a perimeter-based, high trust notion of security, and now you are moving to a zero trust notion where data encryption is available as a service, and that's how applications are using it. So all of these parameters need to be taken while you are devising a multi-cloud strategy.
Right. So very relevant point when you said security should be taken into account. Developer experience is very important because we keep talking about this software is eating the world, but who really builds the software? It's the developers, right? So it's the developers who are eating the world, and their experience is really critical. With that, I'd like to move on to Kavita. Kavita, do you think a multi-cloud environment is a proper, effective strategy for de-risking your cloud strategy?
Okay, so first and foremost, thank you Sneha and ETCIO team to invite me here today. It given me an immense opportunity to learn a lot of things around cloud security, cloud computing, what are the different spaces where it's growing. And it's definitely a good question, whatever we are talking about, as the technology is growing in different areas, in fact, security is definitely a backbone, right? So when we are talking about security, across the globe, most of them or all of them want to change the old tradition model. And they want to really adapt to digitization, accessing data especially from anywhere and everywhere. right? So why do they want that, and how do they taste this, especially during the pandemic season? That's a great testimony for everyone to prove that wherever you are, there is not going to be a stoppage for our deliverables, right? So while we are talking about this, be it based on the data's availability or scalability, on the efficiency of, the availability of the work that was delivered, it was very effective. So a migration to cloud has definitely significantly increased during this period. Now, they have tasted one phase of it. They have chosen the cloud service provider and they've adapted the model, but they are not stopping with that. Why should I get logged in with one vendor? What happens if I'm going to be hit by any downtime of this, going to be a cloud service provider is going to face any disruption? I don't want to stop my deliverables. Let's me get into multi-clouding so that I have different phases and interoperability comes into picture. So when they are moving into different places, security is something which is definitely plays a key role, because we have spoken about a lot of things, and the developers, architects, everybody is involved. But what is the basic foundational element in a cloud computing or a cloud security strategy is awareness. Awareness is a base model, because without awareness, if you're going to onboard any skill shortage resources into a cloud computing environment, there's definitely going to be a data loss, or there's going to be a failure in the model. Specifically, out of the misconfigurations or in misinterpretation of designings that is going to happen, right? And hence, training and awareness is definitely important. I think there is a query. Do you want to ask something, please? Someone raise the hand? Or if not. Okay, so training and awareness is the first core element, and followed by the applications risk assessment. When we are migrating the applications, from on-prem to cloud, we have to be aware that it's not just moving the applications and the availability of is it important, but the security definitely is a skeleton. And if the application is already vulnerable, already affected by some, malwares or antivirus, you cannot be moving the application as it is to the cloud. You have to take do precautionary measures by doing a risk assessment and ensure your application is, well designed, and it is, resilient in nature for us to migrate it in an effective manner. I would share one of the current happening, which the regulators are very keen and demanding in India, specifically in the BFSI scale. Every 3 months or a quarterly, we have a RBI audit, where whatever applications that we are moving to the cloud, we have to keep them notified. It is very important, because they also ensure that if your application is moving to the cloud or it's getting decommissioned or added, you have to notify us, and that's the importance of data governance and protection that they are looking for. So it's not only doing a risk assessment, you have to protect the data in the cloud that you're maintaining. It is not that moving to the cloud is going to be secured in nature, and it's not like how we face the incidents in the premises. Definitely, it is competing in nature, and equally, clouds are also prone for vulnerabilities and risks. So we have to have a 24/7 monitoring system to ensure our data is not only governed but also protected, right? So it's very important. Last but not the least, you'll have to ensure there is business recovery and technology recovery planning that is created, designed in a phase that we are able to effectively govern the business and protect our business as well. Thanks.
Very relevant points when you say that security has to be a foremost concern, because organizations will need constant risk assessment. They will also need to be very careful of what data and applications they're taking to the cloud. They need to be doubly sure of the security aspects there. Also, the cloud speaks very complex languages of containers, microservices, APIs, and that's where the operations and security people could be at loggerheads, because they really need to figure that out internally within the organization. Then there has to be a certain level of cyber resilience, cyber hygiene within the organization as well. Very pertinent points there, Kavita. Brijpal, what do you think should be the nuances of a technology roadmap as you move towards multi-cloud adoption?
Yeah, so I think number one is the set of skills. Right? Because as I said before, all clouds are not equal. So skills which are required for cloud A are not usable on cloud B. So that's one which is, I think one has to really look at very seriously when you are looking at multi-cloud roadmap. But the solution is not to throw people at these problems. Solution is to automate as much as you can. Because the good news is, whether it is security or it is cost or anything else, there is nothing which is uncertain. So everything is known before you take an action on cloud. So say, for example, if you provision a PaaS platform, you know what you are getting into. You know its specifications. You know its security guidelines. So that's why I'm saying that the automation is the key. The second advance is the cost sprawl. And part of the reason for that is the agility. Gone are those days where we used to have centralized infrastructure management function, where all the developer organization, they'll go raise a request for someone to build infrastructure for them. So these days, developers, they are embedded inside the business, right? And respective products, they drive their own agenda, right? So those teams are very small. They are into those businesses. And of course, their main priority is to get the solution in the market and not so much worry about what the cost is, right? So that's the second dimension. Third is, of course, risk, security, and sovereign controls, depending on which country, which business, which industry you are in. And last but not the least is the digital experience. Because when you build solutions, now these solutions are a byproduct of some platforms from cloud A, some from cloud B, some are from cloud C. So to measure the end-to-end digital experience of the customer, you have to have the capability to know each and everything across all those clouds, which none of the cloud service provider provides you. They give you the capability to look at them in isolation, but not end-to-end. So therefore, there are layers which are required to build that abstraction, which is over and above all these clouds, and where the direction in which the industry is moving is everything has to be embedded. So if there is a security requirement for an enterprise, better it is embedded at the time when you are either creating it or you are making a change to it. Yeah, I mean, these are like a couple of which I thought they are important.
Very, very relevant points there, Brijpal, and I will touch upon this in the next, round. But first, I'd like to pick up one thread from your conversation when you spoke about how it helps business quicken the business cycles, and I'd like to take it as a segue to Mr. Chaubey. Mr. Chaubey, in your previous response, you spoke about how it's helping you build data-led projects, better customer experiences. So, with the agility that you get from multi-cloud, is this increasing the pressure on you in any way? How is the reaction from business? Are they expecting more from you now that provisioning is easier, now that it's all instantaneous? So is this putting in more pressure to come up with faster products, launching things faster in the market, better TAT? Are the expectations also increasing in line with the benefits that they're seeing from multi-cloud?
Sneha, I think that's a very relevant point. The moment you start getting the resources, right, be it compute or be it from the challenges with respect to storage, compute, the facilities that you start getting, certainly the pressure builds up, right? Because ultimately the intent of any organization, right, any enterprise, and so that is also valid for telco, right? The speed and scale, so the volume of data, if we are talking about the entire telco, I think customer base would be around 986 million plus, Average usage, if we are talking about today, will be approximately 14 GB per month per user, right? That's the kind of usage. With 5G coming in, the usage is going to at least go up 3 times. The different kind of digital touch points which are getting created. See, we are talking about metaverse, right? We are talking about AR, VR, or we are talking about digital twins. Look at the volume of data that will be generated now, right? We are sitting on double-digit petabytes today, individually as companies. But going forward, certainly this will be multiplied 3 times. So certainly, on one side, the data is increasing, processing is becoming complicated, the queries that we are trying to run or the filters in terms of algorithms, AI algorithms or complex deep learning algorithms that we want to run, they are also becoming complicated. On the other hand, the requirement, the organization wants the results faster, right? They want they want to run the campaigns faster. They want to churn out data faster. They want to understand the behavior of the customer faster. They want to build segmentations, customer segmentation little better, right? They want to run different models, predictive models, be it acquisition models, be it retention, or if it is a kind of optimization that they want to do on maybe networks, they are able to optimize it, right? So self-healing networks, if they want to, automatic distribution of or automatic optimization of the bandwidth. So can the bandwidth be in an automated fashion, can be shifted from one tower to another, right? So that proper network monetization or consumer monetization or enterprise monetization, data monetization should happen, right? So those are the activities which are required by the organization. So those are the few points that I wanted to cover.
Right, thank you. Now, Natwar, in your previous response, you spoke about workflow portability. How do you deal with the issue of workflow portability through delivery on multiple clouds? Because this is not an easy thing to do. It's really hard to architect. How do you think organizations should go about doing it?
Uh, yeah, it is. I, I think if we go back to the basics and really understand what is the definition of multi-cloud or what are the various variants of multi-cloud, we have data portability, which is basically driven by what kind of regulations that the business is facing. If you're operating in multiple markets, you have workload portability, which is essentially about apps being able to run across multiple clouds. And then you have workflow portability, which is essentially the orchestration layer, your DevSecOps, and really the tools and processes that you are using to build applications and to instantiate infrastructure. And I think that what we see is that while not so much of workload portability, but workflow portability is something that we clearly see, and I think the trick really is to kind of break it down further across your DevOps practices, the plan, build, release, deploy, monitor cycle, and try and understand what are the kind of tools that we could use, which can, the open source tools that can work across the cloud platforms. So we do see organizations being able to deploy these workflows and to build these workflows which are portable across CSPs.
Right, right. Richpal, how do you deal with the issue of data portability across for the data residing across multiple clouds?
So, see, data portability relates to the capability how freely you can move data in and out from one cloud service provider to another. I think there are three variables in it. One is the content, the data itself. Second is the schema, the design in which data is stored. And third is the storage, where this data is lying. So largely for IaaS or PaaS-based platforms, this is generally in the control of the customer, because customer himself has deployed either IaaS or the PaaS platform, so they fully know what the content is, what is its schema, and what storage is being used to keep this data. So it becomes fairly simple, I mean, in the sense that there are standardized ways of moving data from one to another. But I think the places where it gets trickier is the SaaS platforms. Because in case of SaaS, customer does not own content, doesn't own schema, doesn't own storage. It is totally in the control of SaaS service providers. And that's where you have to be careful that when we either move data into SaaS-based platforms, either we build a neutral layer, something like ESB, in front of those interfaces so that we know my interfaces are not changing, but I'm giving this data to somebody else, and in parallel, I'm also keeping a copy.
Thanks, Pritchpal. We've run out of time, but there's this one very critical aspect that I want to cover before I let all of you go. Pritchpal touched upon the need for creating abstractions in a multi-cloud environment, and all of us here would agree that multi-cloud, more than anything else, it's a symptom of organizations deploying multiple clouds for their business workloads. So there is definitely a need emerging for creating an abstraction layer that can then help you deal with the preferred public cloud provider, the hybrid internal cloud, the edge computing nodes across multiple locations. And we are seeing the emerging of this concept called a super cloud. So how do you see that revamping the industry? We'll start with you, Brijpal.
I think that's the reality, and that's what I said, that on cloud, good news is that there is nothing which is uncertain. And hence, if you really want to manage multi-cloud ecosystem to suit the business needs, you have to have that abstraction layer, which basically, it's more like something like Make My Trip for airlines or Airbnb for real estate hotels, right?
You're right.
Exactly the same thing. And I think there are new models, we call it hybrid cloud management platforms. In the market, they are emerging right now, which actually takes care of every single aspect, right from provisioning resources, making sure the aspect on security compliance or developer ecosystem, they are embedded.
Right.
When you provision anything on cloud or when you integrate anything. So by the time you have something delivered to the end customer, most of the expectations are already met. It's already security compliance. It's already, cost managed. So when I say cost managed means you got full visibility, end to end, right from the procurement level to the business value, right? So that everybody knows what's, cooking in.
Right.
You got full observability, not only a typical monitoring of various resources, but also, deep tracing, building domain ops, industry-specific journeys, and whatnot. And of course, self-heal capabilities should something go wrong. Then how do we recover from those?
Right. 40 seconds by the clock, Sanjeev. How do you see super cloud revamping the industry?
I think not sure about it at this point of time because the current scenario is of multi-cloud, hybrid cloud. We certainly are.
It creates an abstraction layer on top of the multi-cloud environment.
Yeah. So currently we are not yet there, right? So that is something that we.
So it's a wait and watch for you.
So it's a wait and watch for me.
Kavita?
So as in this digital era and based on the current uncertainties, it really helps to increase the availability, scalability, and cost optimization. This super cloud or any cloud atmosphere that we are going to work on definitely optimizes the efforts and reduces the physical infrastructure.
Right. Natwar?
Yeah, it's Seems like SuperCloud is the logical evolution of a multi-cloud phenomenon. In our client ecosystem, if you think of Snowflake Data Cloud as one of the variants of SuperCloud, we do see organizations adopting it and playing around with it. So we'll see.
Thank you so much, gentlemen, and the lady. Thank you so much for keeping it a lively conversation. In the time that we had, we touched upon a lot of aspects of multi-cloud, starting from a business case to security in various aspects and the way forward. I can see Siddharth getting really impatient, so we'll have to wrap it up right now. Thank you so much, everyone.